Thank you. Right. So, throughout the Irish Troubles in the 1970s and 80s, there were rumours that secretive elements in the British Army intelligence were working closely with Loyalist terrorists, such as the Ulster Volunteer Force and the Ulster Freedom Fighters. It was later shown that a secretive group called the Force Research Unit had been supplying terrorists with guns and explosives, training them to use them for attacks in the Irish Republic and in the North, at British taxpayers' expense. These illegal acts by secret army units have become known as collusion. After the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, Sir John Stevens was tasked with investigating allegations of collusion, which even included loyalist gangs passing lists of suspected IRA members to the SAS for assassination in the notorious shoot-to-kill policy. Sir John Stevens even had his office in Northern Ireland Police Station mysteriously burnt out one night during the inquiry, but had wisely kept duplicate copies of all documents back on the British mainland. So what have we learned in the last 10 years about collusion? What was going on at British taxpayers' expense in Northern Ireland? And was this a few rogue army officers? Or did the decisions go right to the top? Montpellier-based ex-soldier Bryn Richard Cowley has been looking into collusion and joins me now. Hi, Richard.
Good evening, Tony. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
So what was meant by the term collusion in the context of the Stevens inquiry?
I just like to say that I'm also now studying LLB law myself, which brings me to this point.
What does LLB stand for, LLB law, since you're studying it? You're not sure? Okay.
It means that you're a qualified lawyer, doesn't it? Yeah, I think so.
No, you're studying law.
Yes, I know, but once you've got the degree, you're qualified as a lawyer,
okay.
aren't you?
Anyway, carry on. Anyway. What meant by the term collusion in the context of the Stevens inquiry?
Okay. The term collusion is usually addressed actually to financial matters, but in this case, because of the context of Northern Ireland, Sir John Stevens is using it in a different way, and he says that essentially it's the failure to keep records or the existence of contradictory accounts, which can often be perceived as evidence of concealment or malpractice, which further limits the opportunity to rebut serious allegations against, for example, special branch or military intelligence. They're also guilty of the absence of accountability. This means that it allows the acts or omissions of individuals to then go undetected. He then accuses them of withholding of information, which then impedes the prevention of crime and the arrest of suspects. The unlawful involvement of agents in murder implies that the security forces, i.e. MI5, Special Forces, etc., are also sanctioning killings. And that collective of information there is what Sir John Stevens classifies as being collusion.
Okay, so how many deaths occurred through collusion? Do you have any idea?
I think it's hard to say, Tony, isn't it? We don't know how far it goes.
Let's let Bryn answer.
We're talking about perhaps over 20,000 injured and maybe over 3,000 dead in the total troubles.
Yeah. But that's not just the collusionary trouble. That's everybody's bad behaviour, isn't it?
Well, I mean, in terms of John Stevens' accountability in the inquiry, he specifically talks about Lambert and Finnegan in particular in the third part of his inquiry. But there was during, for example, his first 3 years of inquiry from 1987 to 1989, the RUC dealt with over 3,000 terrorist-related incidences, where 261 deaths did occur during his first 3 years of his inquiry. Gives you some idea of the trouble.
What we know about collusion is the tip of the iceberg. So we know that scores of people probably died, but we don't know how many others might, because we don't know what happened and we've not got to the bottom of it. We're not sure exactly how many people might be implicated in this.
Okay, so the big question is, could these deaths have been prevented?
I think that's in the inquiry. Sir John specifically states, I quote here, I also believe that the RUC investigation of Patrick Finnegan's murder in specific should have resulted in the early arrest and detection of his killers. William Stobie, which was the quartermaster of the UDA, did in fact supply information on the planning of Finucane's murder prior to the incident.
He ended up getting shot dead, did he not, on the steps of Belfast Crown Court?
Yeah.
To silence him.
He was eventually executed by the UDA themselves for supplying information to the press, basically, or leaking information.
Okay, so was this incompetence in British intelligence, or do you think that the collusion was deliberate?
Again, Sir John recommends, or recommended, a review of all police procedures into terrorist offences and retraining special branch officers, which I presume he means the RUC, and agreements among all departments and agencies to ensure clarity of roles. And he says, I also propose some new recommendations concerning the future policing of Northern Ireland as a whole.
Okay, so is this a characteristic now accepted as incompetence in police procedures?
It seems to run particularly as characteristic in Northern Ireland in conjunction to the Troubles and in context to the plethora of confusion. In fact, he mentions that he investigated the allegation that senior RUC officers were briefing the Home Office Minister Douglas Hogg and told him that some solicitors were unduly sympathetic to the IRA cause, in which he was obviously referring to Pat Finucane at that point. But unfortunately, Douglas Hogg controversially then repeated this view during the Prevention of Terrorism legislation during the House of Commons. And a week later, the solicitor, Pat Finucane, was then murdered. Sir John said that the comments made by Douglas Hogg QC were not justifiable, and that Douglas Hogg had been compromised. So this obviously shows further incompetence all round, especially by a senior minister. You would have thought better of, especially in context to potentially provoking action against a solicitor.